It's May 2000. The smoky halls of Binion's Horseshoe Casino buzz with tension. At the poker table, a cowboy leans back, his glare stone cold. Across from him sits a sharp-dressed millionaire, calm and confident. But in seat 6, a broke schoolteacher from Illinois.
He was the average Joe who took a shot. He's transformed himself into a professional poker player.
He's out of his depth, sweating through his shirt. His hands tremble as he grips his cards. He tries to steady his breath. For him, this isn't just a game, it's a lifeline. The prize? Over $1 million. Everyone in the room is watching. How is this nobody with no experience outplaying the pros? What is his secret? This is the story of a man who risked it all. A true story like no other. To understand, we need to head back 6 months earlier to an ordinary suburban family home on the other side of America. It's December 1999, and in Kenilworth, Illinois, a 48-year-old family man has just welcomed his 4th child into the world. The holiday season is picking up, and in truth, it should be the most exciting time of his life. But instead, he's miserable, because this family man is broke, totally and utterly broke. For years, he's been working 2 full-time jobs, one as a novelist, which pays peanuts, and the other as a schoolteacher. Slowly, it's killing him inside. He's lost his love for life, and right now, he could lose his second wife too, because she's worried. Someone has to pay the bills, and with a newly born baby, it's all on him. The only thing keeping their finances afloat is the occasional job that he gets as a freelance journalist. Now, most of these jobs are pretty ordinary, writing about things that nobody cares about for magazines that nobody reads. But at the moment, he'll take anything because the phone's just not ringing. Until one December morning when finally it does. On the other end, Harper's Magazine, one of the most respected and prestigious publications in the history of America. It's widely known for groundbreaking features by some of the greatest writers of all time, such as Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway. His answer is immediate: I'll do it. And then they tell him what they want, a piece about high-stakes gambling. At last, it's something he can really get his teeth into. Gambling is glamorous, a little bit dangerous, and can make or ruin lives. If he does a good job, it has the power to turn things around, for him and his family. The question he asks himself though is, what's my angle? Sports betting? Maybe, but it feels like it's being done. Bridge? Perhaps, except he knows nothing about it. Poker? Yes, that's it, that's the one. Not just poker, the World Series of Poker, the most iconic high-stakes gambling event on the whole planet. The World Series of Poker began in 1970 at its iconic home, Binion's Horseshoe Casino in Las Vegas. Founded by Benny Binion, a gangster-turned-casino boss, the Binion family remains one of the most notorious in Vegas history, a reputation made even darker by the mysterious death of Benny's son, Ted, in 1998, just 1 year earlier. As a journalist with an advance for a book, James Jim McManus wants to explore this gritty underworld, but he knows nobody will talk to a journalist. Jim's solution? He won't just report on the World Series of Poker, he'll play in it. He's an unknown amateur stepping into a high-stakes world, up against the greatest players alive. It's a gamble, one that could save his family or ruin them entirely. From January 1st, 2000, Jim starts to prepare. The World Series is scheduled for mid-May, so he doesn't have long, and there are also a couple of problems. Big ones. The first is that right now, the World Series is just for 500 of the best players only. One day, 10,000 entrants will be welcome to take part, but today, it's for the best of the best, and that is not him. He loves the game. He's been playing it for fun since he was a kid, but he's barely even good. He's never even played in a tournament before, let alone this one. But the second problem is a very real one, because even if he did think he could compete with these guys, the buy-in to take part is $10,000, and the advance from his article and book, just $4,000. His young family needs money for Christmas, his family needs money for clothes, they've barely even enough for food, and instead he wants to spend $6,000, which he doesn't have, to go and chase a dream. To his wife Jennifer, is outrageous, but reluctantly, she agrees to support him. Deep down, he knows that this is the ultimate gamble. Failure will cost him more than money. He has just 4 months to raise the cash and sharpen his skills. What could possibly go wrong? So straight away, Jim enters a brutal one-man poker boot camp, spending every minute training before he heads to Las Vegas. What he needs though is strategy. For inspiration, he turns to a poker legend, the winner of 57 tournaments, and at this point, 4 of them are World Series titles. His name, TJ Cloutier. But learning isn't enough. Jim practices relentlessly with his friends, day traders, attorneys, and even a pizza delivery guy. After testing himself on an early poker simulator, it confirms what he thought. He's improving fast, but poker isn't just about logic. The goal in tournament poker is simply to be the last man standing, holding all of the chips, because when you're out of chips, you're out of the tournament. And this is why, as Cloutier's book teaches, the best poker strategy involves influence and control. Top players don't just play the cards, they play their opponents. They force others to fold before the real fight even begins. To win, Jim has to become that kind of player. In his manual, TJ Cloutier reveals how to do it. On May 10th, 2000, when Jim heads to Vegas, the truth is he's desperately looking for luck. Everywhere. He flies in on American Airlines, the nickname for the best start in poker, 2 pocket aces. So that's a good sign. Then he buys a Bellagio visor because his second daughter Beatrice was conceived in Bellagio, Italy. How lucky though, as a player with no experience, will he actually need to be? His first goal is to play against one of the world's best. The absurdity of this idea, however, is brought home the minute he meets one, because the first person he meets when he's checking into Binion's is TJ Cloutier himself. Meeting his hero just raised the stakes. Jim gushes, admits that his book is his Bible, and TJ says that's nice, but makes it very clear that if they meet on the floor, it's war. He does though offer one piece of advice: just follow my golden rule, and then he's gone. Embarrassed, Jim tells himself it's fate and starts to believe that he can make his own. It's the kind of belief based on no evidence, with his family's livelihood on the line, that makes high stakes gambling just as dangerous as his editors had expected. And before he can even sit down at the World Series table, there's still a problem he's yet to overcome: that entrance fee of $10,000. Jim's not the best with money, so he doesn't have it, and with the tournament starting on May 15th, 4 days time, the clock is ticking. There's only one other way into the tournament. As Jim can't buy his way in, he'll have to try and play his way in, by playing a 10 players satellite game where the entrance fee is $1,000. There are a few satellites on offer as he walks through the smoke-filled casino, but none feel right, until he spots a game with just one spare seat. 9 hopefuls already have their chips stacked in front of them, along with their Walkmans and water bottles, ashtrays and fans, and then there's one last place for him. Perfect. Now all he needs to do is beat 9 opponents. Most top players have the money or sponsorship to bypass satellites, but not all. Poker and its commercial value is still growing, so you'll still find some of the very best players at the qualifying events, and that's what happens here. To make it through the World Series, Jim's going to have to make it past another genuine heavyweight, who finished second last month in the World Poker Open, Pakistan's Hassan Habib. The poker they'll be playing through the tournament is Texas Hold'em. For each hand, each player plays a compulsory ante and receives 2 face-down hole cards. 5 shared community cards are then dealt face-up in 3 stages. A first batch of 3 cards is called the flop, and then comes the turn, also known as the 4th street, and finally the river, or 5th street. Players attempt to build, or bluff, the best hand possible using their private hole cards and the community cards. At each stage there's an opportunity to either bet, fold or check. In No Limit Texas Hold'em though, you can also go all in at any time, and the other players must either fold or match the bet. So often, hands don't reach a full 5 card reveal, because by then, all but one player has folded or been priced out of the pot. It's a rule that favours the punchy players, who have the chips to play with, so if Jim doesn't start accumulating, he's going to struggle. Instead, he gets off to a bad start, and the one player that he most needs to be ahead of, Hassan Habib, quickly takes control. And to make it harder, he's giving nothing away. His face is a mask. Somehow though, Jim stays out of trouble, and it all comes down to a final battle between him and Habib. Jim's flop cards are good, 2 queens. So he goes all in thinking this is the moment. Except far from backing off, Habib calls and matches Jim's bet. It's a shock, but what's he got? He has 8 of diamonds, that's nothing, and the king of diamonds, that's bad, because there are 5 community cards to come, and if just one is a king, Jim will lose, and his dream will be over. The flop throws up a jack of spades, a 9 of diamonds, and a 7 of diamonds. No king yet. But now, Hassan has another chance. 1 more diamond and he's got a flush, 5 cards of the same suit, but not in a straight sequence, which will also beat Jim's pair. It's time for the turn, and the dealer reveals the fourth community card, the Jack of Hearts. Phew. But there's still one card to go, the River. If it's a diamond or a king, it's all over. A crowd has gathered. The room is hushed. The card has turned. And it's a Six of Hearts. Hassan freezes, leans back in his chair and gives him a wry smile. Jim can barely believe it. He's done it. Jim's made it through to the competition round and outplayed a world-class pro. Now he's in the big league and things are about to really heat up. The next day, Jim wakes up with a sore head. The night before, he'd celebrated as if nothing could possibly go wrong, and today he carries on celebrating. There are a couple of days until the start of the tournament proper, which, incredibly, he's just qualified for, so he might just have time to check out Sin City's naughty side. So that's what he does, discovering a world of girls, gack and gambling, all of course in the name of journalism. He also tries to make amends for pushing his long-suffering family to the brink by buying his wife a $2,500 ring. It's a gesture to say thank you, but immediately he realises it's stupid. He's now down to his last $500. That won't affect him in the tournament where you can only play with $10,000 worth of chips you get for qualifying or buying your way in, and whatever chips you can then accumulate by surviving, but his next goal is to head home with some cash so he can actually feed his family when this crazy experiment is over. On the upside, the winner gets $1.5 million, and the overall prize pool is $5.2 million, the biggest ever. On the downside, his chances of getting down to the last 9 to 10% of the 500 odd entrants who make it into that prize money is practically zero. On May 15th, 2000, the moment finally arrives. It's day one of the World Series of Poker. An hour before play, he opens his TJ Kutia Bible and starts cramming. His nerves have taken hold. And then at 1:35 PM, he takes his place at table 53, seat 6. Posters along the walls give results from previous events, including a colour photograph of each winner. It's daunting and intimidating. He's just an idiot family guy having a go. He's the only amateur at the table staring down some of the greatest players in the world, and yet as he shuffles his small stack of chips, he tells himself, why not me? For Jim, this isn't just a poker game. He thinks of his wife, of his newborn daughter, and his unfulfilled promises. He can't let them down. By the time the first 15-minute break comes, after 2 hours, he's down just 2,200 chips. Half of all players will be eliminated on the first day. Big names like Phil Ivey and Jennifer Harman have already bitten the dust, and if he can't turn things around, he's certain to be one of them. He goes to his room, calls his wife, and asks, what can I do? He wants to have his TJ Kutia book with him at the table, but he'll look like a clown. So she tells him to take his book of family photos instead, of him, her and the kids. When you need to, look at that, she says. The clock ticks on, and as day turns into night, Jim survives, scraping into day 2. He can't just keep surviving though. At some point, he needs to start killing people off. He needs to start winning. So he turns back to his poker Bible and asks himself, how? Day 2 of the World Series of Poker is underway. At the start of play, 214 still have chips. Today, 169 of those will be eliminated, but the last 45 who will remain will win $15,000. Now hitting this new goal will justify all of those hours, the stress, and the dumb decisions. So he's daydreaming about doing just that, until he wakes up. Who am I kidding? Overnight, he decides how he's going to play it. But still, if he even gets close, it will be a miracle. He starts the day with a modest pile of chips, 30,000. But by sticking to his plan, that soon goes up. But with the antes and blinds, the cost of buying into and staying in a hand constantly increasing throughout the tournament, the pressure mounts and the swings are dramatic. By the time just 47 players remain, 2 away from the cutoff, Jim's right back where he started. It's a scarily small pile of chips at this stage in the game, especially when he's then faced with one player he absolutely does not want to see. TJ Kutia. TJ has the fear factor for everyone. He's a big guy, 6'5", 270 pounds, and widely regarded as the best player in tournament poker, but especially for Jim, this is his poker idol, and if he has any kind of strategy that can help him stay in the game, and so far he's mostly played like he hasn't, he's learned from his book. TJ, meanwhile, knows that and is the kind of player who's going to take advantage of people not wanting to get eliminated, because the worst way that you can play no limit hold'em poker is to fear losing. It all builds towards one killer hand. Jim secretly holds an ace and a jack. He's in a strong position. Some players fold, but not TJ, who raises by $5,000. He's bullying almost all of those remaining out of the game, because that's what big raises do. That's what TJ does, but not Jim. Because while TJ's tournament Bible says fold, because now is not the time to be squandering all his chips, his book of family photos, which the cameras are starting to pick up on, says be brave, play the numbers game and raise, because the odds of TJ holding a better hand than an ace and a jack are small. Stuck in the middle of these two ideas, Jim calls, and TJ growls at him. The flop comes, a 6 of hearts, an ace of diamonds, a 9 of clubs. Jim now has a pair of aces. What he doesn't know is that so does TJ. Jim's ace-jack will beat TJ's ace-10, but TJ goes on the attack once more. He goes all in, and it's all down to the last 2 cards. The turn brings in a second 9, giving Jim 2 pairs, 9s and aces. Only if the river brings another 10 can he lose that hand. Pretty much anything else means that Jim's hero is going home. Correction, Jim is sending his hero home. Except a 9. That's what comes, giving both players a full house, 2 aces and 3 9s. It's an unbelievable freak moment, a stalemate, a split pot for Jim, and also a kind of relief, because for him to kill off his hero, now that really would be embarrassing. The hands drag on and on as Jim focuses only on beating that cut, but as he stays in the game, he starts to win, and win big, again, and again, and again. The family man is starting to get a lot of attention from the cameras and crowd, and they all want to know the same thing. How is this first timer doing it? By the end of day 2, when that cut finally comes, he's hit his latest goal of $15,000. He also holds a huge stash of chips to play with, the equivalent of $276,000, and the 3rd highest total in the whole field of 45 players. It's time to set his final goal. Big money. Could he even go on and win? May 17th, 2000, day 3 of the World Series of Poker. Things are getting serious. Just 5 tables of 9 players remain. The antes, which all players must pay at the start of each hand, are now up $1,000. The small blind by the first player in the line is up to $2,000, and the big blind by the next is up to $4,000, meaning that there's also a minimum stake for anyone else wishing to stay involved. This makes any player with less than 20,000 chips extremely vulnerable, and finally gives Jim, with his 276,000, the chance to be the bully. But the experiment soon backfires. He loses 2/3 of his chips and drops under 100,000. Back in more familiar underdog territory, he rallies and returns from dinner with over 400,000 chips. To antes of $2,000, blinds of 5,000 and 10,000, and the final 14 players on 2 tables of 7. The bad news? He's now swimming with the biggest sharks of all. When anyone looks to raise, it's usually by $50,000. It's terrifying. This is monopoly money, chips, so it doesn't actually matter, but every cut he survives, the cash he takes home increases, so surviving really matters. And who's sitting at seat 7 on his table? Again, it's his mentor and nemesis TJ. Yesterday, he was a fraction away from sending him packing. Today, TJ will surely try to return the favour and get the job done. Jim holds the Ace of Hearts and King of Spades, a hand that some less politically correct commentators refer to as Anna Konikova because it looks good but rarely wins. It's a good start though, for sure, so he opens the bidding with $50,000, scaring everyone away, except for TJ, who raises $100,000. He's trying to batter Jim out of the hand like he did to everyone else, except Jim has Ace-King, so he won't fold and matches his raise. The flop brings the 4 of diamonds, 5 of hearts and 2 of clubs, and now Jim's in trouble. He needs to make the first move. There's nothing for him, so he checks. TJ sits, stares, looks like he wants to knock his head off, and then he raises again, $200,000. He either has a very, very strong hand, or is trying to bluff him into submission. Time stands still. Jim looks at his cards, at TJ, and thinks back to his Bible, TJ Cooter's manual, the how-to of tournament poker, and how he memorised it word for word, and he remembers its words on this exact current hand, an Ace-King and 3 nothing cards. The verdict? Get out. But then he looks to his family photos and thinks, TJ knows he read his book, so instead, he attempts a double bluff and also bets $200,000. It's down to the turn and the flop. The turn brings a 7 of diamonds, no help to Jim, but TJ goes in again, for the biggest pot of the tournament. If Jim loses, he's gone, but if he folds, he'll lose all that he's put down and will be gone anyway, in the very next hand. He breathes, thinks hard, and decides he really only has one choice. He calls. No more bets. Their whole cards must be revealed. Jim has ace-king, TJ has ace-9. The river is still to come. Would the final card throw everything on its head? The dealer speaks. Here's the river, and it's the 8 of diamonds. The white noise fills Jim's ears as the room erupts. He's beaten TJ in a huge hand, and the tournament director, a silver-haired veteran called Bob Thompson, calls it. Jim McManus wins $860,000 and becomes the new chip leader. TJ taught me everything I know about this game, Jim announces. Read his book and you'll see. It didn't teach you that, boy, he growls. On day 4, Jim McManus makes it to the final table of the World Series of Poker, earning himself a commemorative final table jacket. There, he finishes 5th, beaten only by Roman Abinsay, Hassan Habib, who had to pay his way after Jim had beaten him in the satellite qualifier, TJ Kutia, who'd finished 2nd, and the eventual winner, the long-haired Chris Jesus Ferguson, who'd bagged a cool $1.5 million. Not bad for 4 days' work, but then again, he's a pro. What's more amazing is that an amateur family man who nobody had heard of, who'd learned his strategy from a book by one of his opponents, took home an unbelievable $247,760. And what was the strategy? The idea had been to think like a razor. As soon as you have the chips, be a bully, and then when you have the cards too, be a bigger bully. But when TJ says his goodbyes, the real strategy of poker winners is revealed. Be lucky. There's a lot of luck in poker, and if you're going to play this game, you better get used to it. And the title of Jim's article in Harper's says it all, Fortune's Smile. The magazine article became a book, Positively 5th Street, the book became a bestseller, and Jim McManus became a poker celebrity, but he never won big again. He'd had his luck. Now it was someone else's turn.